Welcome to Let's Talk with Dr. Shanessa Fenner. I'm your host, Dr. Shanessa Fenner, and I have a very special guest today, Reverend Felica Thompson.
How are you?
I'm fine. How are you?
Thank you. Thank you. So happy to be here.
I'm glad you're here. So why don't you first start off by telling the audience a little bit about yourself?
Well, as you already stated, my name is Felica Thompson, Felica Raines Thompson, and I am the wife of Reverend Brian R. Thompson, who pastors Simon Temple AME Zion Church in Fayetteville, North Carolina. I am the mother of Alexis, who is 12, and Brian II, who is 11. I am the director of women's ministries at my church. I also host a weekly radio show called Free to Be Me. Thank you for coming on and being my guest on the show not long ago.
And thank you for having me.
To talk about everything that you're doing, and especially your mentoring program at the school where you are the principal. I'm just happy to be here. I do so many things that I just give God all the glory and honor for giving me the opportunity and also the energy to be able to do the things that He's called me to do.
Okay. What are some of those things that He's called you to do, Reverend Felica?
Well, my passion is women's ministry. I like to see women empowered. I like to see women encouraged. For so long, I remember growing up in a pastor's home and going to church, and I would see so many children that were down, women that were down, you know. And when I married my husband and we began ministry together, encouragement became my ministry. Just being an encouragement to anyone, and so there's so many things that happen in the lives of not only us as women, but in our children's lives. And so I think it's very important that we pour into them early on to encourage them, so that they'll be able to know how to face different things in life. In college, as I began to go to church, I would see so many people as well come to church, but then leave and still be the same way they were. I would go to church not really knowing a lot of people around me because I was used to being in church around my family. So when I was in college and I got involved in church, I went and I just worked. I didn't really know a lot of people on a personal level, but I went and I worked and I worked and I worked. And they're like, why do you work so hard in the church? But I knew the calling on my life and how hard it was for pastors and their families because they're being pulled in so many different directions. So if I could help in any way, I was always there and willing to do that. And so that's what I did. And that's when my passion began to start, when I started to encourage other women, you know, other college students that were going to church with me, you know, not to just be one way here and then ready to raise holy you know what when you get back to the campus, you know. Having a relationship with God is for real, you know. So please do that in a genuine way, you know. And you can do that in a genuine way. You don't have to fit in with everybody that goes to school with us. So it was a thing of me kind of sticking my neck out there, not knowing if I was going to lose some friends because they were like, oh, you know, you want to talk about church now? You weren't always in church, you know. And I know, you know, we'll stray from what we were taught once we get out of our parents' homes. I did that. However, once I came to myself and God reminded me of who He wanted me to be, that there was no questioning that was not the life for me. You know, just knowing Him changed my life. And it wasn't until I got away from my parents' home that I was able to get to know God. Because being in a home with folks that know God, you're going to go to them and trust them for everything. And that's what I did. When things went wrong, I went to my parents and said, you know, if you pray, then God will answer your prayer. So you pray for me, and this is what I want you to pray for. And they're like, what? Why can't you pray? And I was thinking to myself, He's not going to listen to me, but I know He'll listen to you. But when I got out of their house and I started to experience things in life on my own in college and came to myself, God said, I've been with you all the time. I want a relationship with you. You don't need to know me the way your mother knew me or your grandmother knew me. You need to know me personally for yourself. And so when I had that experience and God came to me himself to say, I want to know you, I want us to have a relationship, that's when I started my journey. And I feel like not until then, I don't know, I really can't explain what my life was. It was a series of just walking around being spiritually dead. And there's so many people you see out here like that. They're alive, they're breathing, they're going to work every day, but they don't have a relationship with God. So to me, it's like you're walking dead.
Now, Reverend Felica, how do you or how can you begin to have a relationship with God?
Well, God, it's funny you asked that because I was talking to someone the other day, and I was talking about those fans that sometimes you see at church, and there's a door, and then there's a man dressed with a sheet on, and he's like this, like he's about to knock on the door. And so we were describing a relationship with God by that door being your heart, and God is constantly at that door, but he wants you to open the door so that you can let him in. Well, so many times people that don't know Christ or have never been introduced to Christ think that is some really spooky thing that, you know, you guys are crazy because you're believing in and you're talking to and you're praying to something or someone that you've never seen. But first of all, it's about your faith. Romans tells us, if I confess with my mouth the Lord Jesus and I believe in my heart that God raised him from the dead, then thou art saved. So that key word in there is believe. Because if you don't believe that he is, then you can't have faith in what he can do in your life. So to me, the first step is to believe in him. Believe that he came, believe that he died, believe that he rose again, and invite him into your heart because he's right there waiting to come in. So if people would ask for forgiveness, you know, forgive me for my sins and cleanse me from all unrighteousness and come into my heart and be my Lord and Savior, God will do that. He will do just that. I don't like to even think about what my life was like before I gave my life to Christ. I mean, it's so much out there that people do or you get involved in your lifetime. And you think that it's fun and it's good and you're living, but you're not really living. You're not really living until you have totally surrendered your life to Christ. In my opinion, that's just my opinion. Until you totally surrendered your life to Christ and God is able to lead you and guide you in what your calling is in life. You said you've been doing this show for 15 years. You've been encouraging people through this show for 15 years. That's one of your callings. So many that you have. And so I believe that in order to be centered in what you're supposed to be doing, then you need to ask for that guidance from God, and he'll show you those avenues on where he can use you to change the lives of others.
Okay. Now tell us about your show, Free to Be Me.
Free to Be Me. Wow, Free to Be Me was birthed out. I was asked by Wes and Sandy Cookman to be a host of one of the First Lady Roundtable sessions they were having. And every month they would have a different First Lady to host it. And I had hosted it twice already, and they asked me a third time. And so I went back. I was like, oh, Lord, as bad as I cut up and laugh and have fun in there, they asked me to do it again, so they did. And when I came out, they were in the hallway like, you think you should come and do this every week? I was like, I don't know. Should I? And so I said, I don't know what I would talk about. And I don't know what I would call it. And so I said, let me pray about it, and I'll give you guys a call and I'll let you know. So I immediately called my husband when I got in the car, and I said, they want me to do something every week. I was like, you were the communications major in college. I was an education major. I went to school to be a teacher, okay? And I was like, this is not my forte. So he was like, well, why don't you try it? You seem to have fun when you do it, so why don't you try it? So I did. I called them back and I said, I want to try it. When is it going to air? You know, what do I call it? What do I do? And they were like, you have to come up with that concept. So at first, it was still a First Ladies Roundtable, and I would invite different First Ladies from the community to come, and we would talk about different issues that we face. We would talk about how, you know, sometimes people want us to have perfect kids, and you know, everybody would always say the preacher's kid are the worst. Well, I was one of those too, but I was too afraid to be one of the worst because I knew I had to go home with my parents.
That's
and I knew I would be in big trouble. But there were others out there that would get those labels, and because I was one, I had to let folks know that that's not necessarily the case. What happens is sometimes parents get caught up in their calling and kids feel like they're forgotten about.
Oh.
I wore those shoes. I felt like my parents put their calling before me. I was, and anybody that knows me can tell you, if the phone rings right now and it's Brian or Alexis Thompson, I'm out of here because they're first. I can't be a minister and minister to other folk and not minister to the people who are in my home. I can't encourage and call my brother who's a pastor if I don't encourage my husband who's right here at home. You know, I believe that ministry starts at home. So if you're going to make sure other folk, if my gift is encouragement, then I got to make sure I'm encouraging my children, I'm encouraging my husband. And one way to do that is to support them and be there for them. And they always know that I'm going to be there for them. So I think that's a very important aspect of ministry. So we talked about those types of things. We talked about, you know, the wearing of the hats and the suits and the, you know, how people want us to wear hats and sometimes some of the more seasoned ladies will come to church and they'll have their hats on. They're like, Felica, where's your hat? And I was like, I didn't wear a hat. I was like, okay, somebody tell me, is there like a thing that I have to wear one? I wore them before I became a minister, but who is going to wear a suit with a hat, get to church and have to take it off, put on a robe, get in the pulpit, and then wait till after service to put on another suit, put the suit back on and the hat? Too much. And I decided that those hats are hot and my head is sweating. And I don't want my head to be wet when the service is over because those things are hot, you know? So I used to wear them before I became a minister, but I don't, you know, there's no room for it anymore. As time develops, things change, you know. If I'm going to a conference where I don't have to preach or I don't have to speak, no, I take that back. I was going to say maybe I would wear one, but I take that back. I haven't. I've been to many conferences where, I was able to sit in the congregation and be poured into, and no, I didn't wear a hat. So it's a lot of different things that we talked about when the show first started. And after that, my dad got sick. He had heart problems, and
is he okay?
And he passed away. But before then, I was taking care of him and taking care of his house and my house, so it got to be a little bit much. So I went off the air for a while, and a couple of months after he passed away, I felt like it was something that he wanted me to continue because he would listen to me every week. He loved to listen. He wouldn't let me put a computer at his house so he could log on and see. He was like, I don't need all that. I could just hear your voice. I'm good. And he was very proud. And he didn't want me to stop the show, but I was like, something has to be cut back from my schedule because I have to put taking care of you first because I can't let my home lag, but I couldn't let him, lack either. I was his only child here, and I had moved him here. He wanted to be here, to be near me. And so to juggle my schedule, that was the one thing that I cut back. So when he passed away, it was such a wonderful day to go back on the air because I knew he enjoyed it. So that was happy. That was a happy time for me. So I went back on the air and just invite people from all walks of life, just to talk about whether they have a story of healing and deliverance, talk about the positive things that are going on in the community, talk about how the community can come alongside each other and our children and our churches can come together to make a better community in Fayetteville. And so it's so many things that we talk about now on the Free to Be Me show, but that's how the Free to Be Me show began, and that's why I named it that, because it was a place where I was free to be who I was. Didn't have to wear a hat. I didn't have to have on the right shoes. I didn't have to have on the right outfit. Just go in there and everybody comes and give their opinion on different aspects of life. And so it began to be a fun thing for me because it was impacting the community And I would get emails from people saying, you know, I heard the testimony of the sister. Do you think I can get her phone number and contact her? One sister came on who was diagnosed with well, wasn't diagnosed actually with cancer, but she felt like the lump in her breast, that she felt like something was wrong. And the doctor told her, you know, we looked at it, we biopsied it, no cancer at all. She went to a different doctor and asked that doctor, can you take a look at it too? Well, matter of fact, don't worry about looking at it. Somebody else looked at it. I want you to just take it out. And when they took out the mass, they came back to her and said, what we took out of you was cancer. And her message was, please, women, men, take control of your own health. When you get a doctor's report, when you get a diagnosis, get a second opinion, get a third opinion if you need to, but don't just stop right there, because they told her not to worry. It wasn't cancer, and it was.
Wow.
It was. And had she sat around, it would have gotten worse, of course.
Yes.
You know, and she probably would have gone through even more severe chemo than she had to go through. So she didn't have to experience the hair loss and things of that nature, because she didn't have to have it that aggressive. But being proactive and taking advantage and taking charge of her own health, it was taken out of her, you know. And that day when we did that show, there were messages for her when we got off the air, and because she told women, men, boys, girls, whoever it is, I'll go with you. If you don't feel like driving yourself, I'll drive you. And I've seen her do that before for another lady that was diagnosed with cancer at our church, and she drove her to every chemotherapy session. She drove her to every doctor's appointment. She was there until she passed away. She was always there for her. And she said, First Lady, who would have known that I would have ended up with this too? I said, well, you helped somebody else, so God gave you the ability, and he gave you some common sense to say, get it out of you. Get it out of you. So those types of stories that come on the show, it's been so many of them. And so I feel so excited, because it gives people hope. It increases faith to know that if God was there for this young lady, or if he was there for this young man, then he can be there for me too. And so I just really enjoy doing it. I enjoy doing it.
Okay. Reverend Felica, I know that a lot of women that I talk to, I feel that have a little bit of depression in them.
Yes.
Okay. When I talk with people, I've had people to call me and, you know, weren't feeling well, thinking about taking their lives, you know, and I think that it's a situation that needs to be addressed. Give me your advice or your opinion on how we need to handle depression in women.
You know, it's a really serious issue. I was there. And I can say that being there is what led me to Christ. I'll tell you why I say that. I found myself in that predicament. I was so depressed, and I know it was the enemy, because I really had no reason to be depressed. I was my senior year in college. I wasn't working an internship at the time, but I was doing my student teaching, so that was a full-time thing. I did that. I had my own place. My parents made sure I had a car. You know, all my needs were met, but it was something still missing. So it made me depressed. It was like, and I couldn't put my hand on why. I couldn't explain it. So one weekend, I called my mom and I asked her if she would come see me for the weekend, and she said, I'm busy. We got a church conference. And I was so distraught. And I said, if she only knew that I was so depressed, I had already told myself, if I feel like this when the weekend comes, that I was going to take my own life. And I told myself that. And so I didn't tell her that. But when she said no, I even felt more in despair. And I was like, she doesn't even care. See, that church is coming before me still, you know. And I contemplated. One of my sorority sisters called and said, hey, you know, there is a party. You want to go? So I said, yeah, pick me up, you know. Pick me up. I'm going, you know, trying to be grown, having participate in spirits that are being passed around. And when I got home, I fell asleep. And when I woke up, I was still alive. I was like, something's wrong here. I know what I plan to do. Why am I here? And the voice, the enemy, came back to me and was like, see, you can't even do that right. And at that moment, the light bulb went off and said, you know where that's coming from. It was Sunday morning. Put your clothes on and go to church. And when I went to church, that day I gave my life to Christ, and I was in front of the preacher, but I was the last person in the back seat. But when he asked who would like to give their life to Christ, I was the first one in front of him to get there, because I knew it was an urgency in me. I knew that the enemy was really trying to make me do that to myself. And there was no reason. There was no reason. So I said all that to say, depression is the enemy's way of putting a magnifying glass on what's going on. It could be a little issue, but he will put a magnifying glass over it, and to you, when you're looking through it, it looks huge, but it really isn't. It really isn't. And I really think more often than not, we downplay it when it comes to women in depression, and oh, she'll be okay. But no, that person needs someone to talk to. That person needs a confidential person to talk to. That person needs a professional person to talk to. And I've talked to so many women that what will happen is, if they talk to a professional and the professional says, well, I think maybe you should go on something to kind of help you balance it out, because sometimes you have a chemical imbalance going on. But I've counseled so many women that say, I'm not taking no medicine. Are they crazy? I'm not crazy. I just get down sometimes, but I'm not crazy. You know, own what you're going through. Don't mask it. Own it. If they say take the pill, get some water, swallow it. If it's gonna keep you balanced, do that. Because otherwise, you're in an uproar all the time, then you have the people around you in an uproar all the time. And really, it's a way of you coping with your depression that sends you to those spiral things. I believe that it is only a spiritual battle. Depression is a spiritual battle in the mind, and the enemy doesn't take a break in trying to destroy us. When you've had your mind made up to do something, how many times have you ran into every stumbling block there is?
Oh, yes.
That's what happens. When you're headed in the right direction, he's going to put roadblocks. He's going to put some detours. There are going to be some speed bumps. There are going to be some storms. But if you stop, you'll never get there. So you have to press forward, even past the disease of depression. And if you have to talk to somebody, do that. I don't know why we're so scared to say, I'm not talking to a professional. Yeah. Why? That's what they studied. They studied the mind.
That's what I was going to tell you. In the Black community, it's taboo to see a therapist.
It is. It is. Everywhere else is no big deal. You know what? I'm going to talk to my shrink. I'm going to sit on the couch. I mean, there are all these different colloquialisms that people use to say they're going to talk to a psychiatrist, but we won't do it. We're too, no. If I have a problem, I have an issue, I want to sit down and talk to somebody about it that can help. That doesn't mean I don't have faith. I do. I have faith and common sense to know that I need help, right? Why wouldn't you do that? A lot of people say, I'm not stepping out on faith. Well, I believe you're stepping out on food if you get out there and try to do it all on your own. That's what I believe, because God gave us common sense and he wants us to use it. He wants us to use it. So in that, with depression, I think that you need to connect yourself with someone that knows who they are and where they're going with us women. That's what we need to do, because iron sharpens iron. And when I see my sister going down, I need to be there to pick her back up, and vice versa, because the person that's encouraging everybody all the time, they get down sometimes too.
Yes, of course. Yes.
And so I think that is what we're missing, especially in the sisterhood. So many times we have the crab mentality. Everybody's trying to pull you down. No, when I looked at your resume, all that stuff you do, I was like, okay, does she breathe? Does she sleep? Does she eat? But you know what? That was so encouraging to me. I hadn't even met you when I read it, but that's what I was saying. And when you came to the radio station to be on the show, you just as calm, like, okay, where do I sit? What do I do? Okay, how many breaks? Okay, because those are your gifts. Those are your talents. And God didn't say, I'm only going to give you one. You only can do that, Shanessa. You can't do everything else. No, you really encouraged me when you said, when you on the show, you said so many people always say that. You're always doing too much. You're doing this, you're doing that. Okay, so what am I supposed to be doing? A idle mind is a devil's workshop.
Yes, it is.
I'm not going to sit around doing nothing.
No.
I'm going to pour into my spiritual man and my physical man those things that are positive, those things that will bring back a return on the gift that God has given me. And so that's what you do all the time. When you're at your school with the kids, with the mentoring program you started, those girls are so excited. They're pumped up because they're ready and they see a successful woman that's not idle.
Exactly.
And that's what they're going to become when they grow up. And when you see them and they come back and like, this is because of you. That's the reward right there.
Thank you, Jesus.
That's the reason why you didn't bury that gift that God put in you. That's the reason why your gifts have multiplied 10 times over, because you decided to use them to bring someone else along. And you know, those kids are not related to you. You didn't do that because they're your nieces, your little cousins. You know, you did that because God put that passion on the inside of you.
And those are my babies.
And those are your babies. That, you know, that is awesome. When I taught high school, I didn't have kids at the time. I wasn't married at the time. I coached varsity cheerleading. So that's what I told my girls. Y'all are my babies. This is it.
That's
you know, I was there before school started. Early in the morning, and I was one of the last teachers to leave.
That's right.
In the afternoon, because I wanted to make a difference in their lives. I didn't just want to merely be a teacher. They came in the room, they left, and I had no other contact with them. You know, I wanted to do something that would help them know that you have a bright future. You know, and you're going to write that yourself, you know. From here on, you're going to write that. Watch what you say, watch what you do, watch how you act, watch the patterns that you begin to make. If you're not going to have good study habits now, you're not going to have them when you go to college. What are you doing, you know? So it's about each one, grabbing one, encouraging one, and teaching one. That's what I have to say.
Okay. Now, Reverend Felica,
Yes.
what kind of a legacy would you like to leave?
Oh, wow. You know, I've been looking and I've been talking with my 12-year-old daughter. My children, they've encouraged me so much. I would love to leave a legacy that keeps them pushing forward in spite of. And I say that because one day my daughter came to me and she was talking, and she began to cry. So and I was like, what is wrong? I was thinking something bad had happened. And she said, you know, Mom, I'm crying. I'm not sad. Nothing happened. She said, but I'm just so happy. You know why? She said, I'm happy because the enemy has tried to destroy me, destroy you, destroy Brian and Daddy. But it didn't work. You know why? Because we trust God. And that, I'm looking at my legacy. That's what came in my spirit. I started crying. She was like, well, why are you crying? I'm crying because obviously you're listening to something that Daddy and I are preaching.
That's good.
You know, and I would have never thought that she would say that. She was preparing to go to bed. You know, she was coming to say goodnight. And, you know, maybe it was in her devotion. My children make sure they read a devotion at night before they go to sleep and in the morning when they wake up. And so I usually talk to them about it. So I was thinking, okay, she must have read about that tonight in her devotion, you know. She was like, no, I was just thinking, you know, it didn't work. He tried to destroy us, but it didn't work. You know, so many things have gone on this year. Didn't work. She said, so I know that it's never going to work. Whatever he tries, it's never going to work. So I'm happy about that because God is with, that means God is with us. He's keeping us, he's sustaining us, and we're going forward. And I was just like, wow, okay. And I felt empowered as a mom, because sometimes you think you're sowing into them and they ain't paying attention and they're not listening. And because they're, to me, my biggest and best ministry.
Oh, yes.
I was like, thank God. I was so excited I couldn't sleep. I called my husband. I was like, guess what happened? And he's like, what? You're all excited. And I was sharing with him what she shared with me. And on her way out of my room, she said, Mom, she said, you encouraged me so much. So I just want to give you a little bit of that. I said, okay, thanks. I appreciate that. I said, thanks, you know. So they're my legacy. they're my legacy.
Now, do you see them? Are they interested in ministry as well?
My son, some years back, he would write things down and write titles of sermons down, and he would give them to my husband. You're on the way to work on your sermon, Dad? I have something I need you to take a look at. And he would give it to my husband. My husband said, from now on, why don't you write down what God gives you, and you add to it as he gives it to you, and you can preach it yourself. No, Dad, he said, when I'm 11, I'll do it. I'm going to preach what God gave me when I'm 11. Well, he's 11 now. My husband and I were just talking about it the other day, and I said, I'm not bringing it up to him. Are you? He said, no. But a couple of weeks ago, we had an 11-year-old to preach at one of the meetings that we were having on the district, and we hosted it at our church. And I was wondering, how is he going to respond when he sees this young man preach? He was sitting with his friends. They had all the kids sitting together, you know. But I never really asked him again, because I knew he didn't say anything about it, because he said when he turns 11. And so his rationale was, I will be able to see over the podium because he's so short. He says, when I'm 11, I'll be tall enough to see over the podium. But my kids, they minister already. This is their first year in public school. My daughter, I don't know if I should say this, but she's in school praying for people. Good. Mom, I had to pray for my friend because somebody was bullying her, and she wanted to, you know, go back at the person, but she knows she would get suspended. So she said, can you please pray with me before we go to this next class? So she's in class. She's in the hallways in school praying for people, you know. So the legacy lives on. And I think, you know, even with my son not, you know, actually preaching now, he does it with his friends in his own little way, you know, just trying to drop little seeds. You know.
Well, Reverend Felica, our time is up. It's been a pleasure, sweetie.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much. And thank you, viewing audience. Have a great day.
So very much hypnotized, familiar, stranger, wait, hold up, don't run